God will use, if we think about our faith stories, God has used people, different people and different things to take us along our journey.
Hey friends, it's Abdu Murray, and as promised, we're bringing to you a second segment of part 2 to my coulda, shoulda, or woulda with Brandon Cleaver. I won't go into a lot of introductory comments because we've already done that, and if you haven't seen the first segment with Brandon, please do go watch that because he's going to share with us not just a shoulda, which he shared last time, but also a coulda or a woulda in a wide-ranging conversation that basically covered virtually the entire gamut of spiritual issues that people tend to have. So Brandon Cleaver is with me. So let's just jump right into it, brother. And you talked about a shoulda last time. Let's couple more aspects of this conversation. And again, just if you can, for 30 seconds, set the
Yes.
stage for the conversation in case someone hasn't seen
Yes.
the previous episode.
Sure. Thank you. And like I said, this was a very long conversation that took place. It was over a few hours. And the reason that it was so long is because there were many ideas, some competing, that were espoused. So some of those were pantheistic monism, scientism, and religious pluralism. So I won't go into defining all those
Sure.
now. You can look at part 1 to
Yeah.
see a brief definition of those. But at the end of part 1, I also talked about how although part of the shoulda was that I should have been a little bit more assertive in nailing down the heart issue, the one primary sort of concern that this person had on their heart. I was able to pull out something that I do think was important
Sure.
to him, and that was autonomy.
Mhm.
And so, as I thought about that, and sort of transitioning to what I could have done.
Mhm.
Well, actually, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go to scientism because that was one thing that he talked about a
Sure.
lot.
Yeah.
And with scientism, he kept using the word probability a lot. He would talk about how when he's thinking about, let's say, an X and a Y,
Yeah.
if X seemed to be more probable, then that's the idea. Whatever standard he used in his mind,
Mhm.
that was more. So he just kept using the word probability.
Sure.
So I was thinking to myself then, okay, well, how could I leverage this verbiage that he was using to build a bridge in the conversation?
Sure.
Because obviously this is what the Apostle Paul did at the Areopagus,
Yeah.
building a bridge with this culture that
Mhm.
espoused many different spiritual ideas
Yeah.
than what he had.
Mhm.
The first thing he said, of course, was, men of Athens, I see that you are very religious.
Yeah.
We have this commonality.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was thinking about.
Sure.
And so in this, what I did was I was reminded of another book I had read quite a while ago by Richard Swinburne, where he dealt with the resurrection of Jesus from a probabilistic
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. He uses Bayes' theorem and all that. Yeah.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And so what I did was with this person I mentioned the book, I didn't go into a lot of that theory
Sure.
because just to be frank and honest,
Mhm.
it's been a long time since I read it.
Yeah.
And there are parts of it that I couldn't remember as well as I hoped. So I didn't want to give, bits
And there's been
pieces.
updates since then, but sure.
Yes.
The point still remains the same.
Right. But just referencing that was enough to really, I could see him sit up in his chair and be interested.
Mm.
That was my opportunity to then go through the important parts. I won't say the important parts, the parts of the resurrection narrative that scholars of all different faith or maybe non-faith or non-religious backgrounds agree on. After I went through all of those different parts of the narrative, I said that these scholars believe that it is much more probable that it's historically true that Jesus actually rose from the dead.
Mhm.
Now I'm giving you, of course, a synopsis of our
Oh, sure, of
discussion
course.
here. But when I went through this, he sat back in his chair, and I could tell that he was thinking about it and said, "Oh, that actually makes sense."
Mhm.
Now, this was at the tail end of a 3-hour conversation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be frank with you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was tired.
Yeah.
I was tired.
I've been there.
But what I could have done then,
Mhm.
okay, because that's sort of when the conversation tailed off a bit.
Sure.
What I could have done then is using his agreement on that, then use the exclusive claims of Jesus, who he claimed to be, and the implications of the resurrection to then critique some of those points that he had made about scientism, about religious pluralism, about pantheistic monism.
Mhm.
If the resurrection is true, then these other things cannot
Yeah.
be true. And so that was one thing where, I was like, man, I really could have dove a bit more into the person
Mhm.
and the deity, the divine nature of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
Um, so I wish I would have persevered
Yeah.
a bit more, and I could have done that. But yes,
Well,
yes,
and those two things are related because the shoulda is I should have got a little more assertive to get to the
yes,
heart of the matter, the big issues, and then you did actually pick up on something that he had, for lack of a better word, an affinity for,
right,
and then use that as a bridge to get somewhere. But it was at the tail end of the conversation, so at some point it was
yeah,
a little bit too tough to get to the okay. I'm going to deal with all the other stuff in sort of now. It's presented itself.
yeah,
It may have presented itself an hour earlier
yeah.
had you been a little more on
More
the
assertive,
assertive side. So that's
exactly.
but these are all related. These are
Yes,
that's actually quite brilliant because there's a lot of people who would go through that and say each one of the shoulda cascades into a coulda and the coulda cascades into a woulda sort of atmosphere or possibility. So I
yeah.
appreciate that, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think too, it's also something we can think about when we're in these conversations based on our relationship with this person.
Hmm.
You may or may not have more opportunities to talk to them. Now, God will use, if we think about our faith stories,
Hmm.
God has used people, different people and different things to take us along our journey.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do think this was an opportunity for me to really talk more about the person of Jesus. And I'm just not sure when I'm going to get that opportunity with this person again. So
Yeah.
I do think that that's something I could have done.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned, there's a lot of things I learned from this.
Yeah. Sure.
So
Yeah.
I do have a would have
Yeah.
as
Please.
well. As I thought about those three main ideas,
Hmm.
the scientism part was one that really stuck out.
Okay.
And what I was sort of waiting for
Hmm.
was him. So I gave a definition of scientism in the first one. I'll say that again real quick.
Hmm.
It's sort of the idea that the hard sciences, chemistry, biology, so on and so forth, give the most reliable and genuine um, uh, information about our universe and the things in it.
Hmm.
Now, that's one definition of scientism, but it can run the gamut. Some have a more hard stance,
Hmm.
some have a more soft stance, like J.P. Moreland's
Yeah.
Secularism and Scientism
Yeah.
book. He talks about it a lot there.
Hmm.
But because he was talking so much about scientism and probability and these types of things,
Hmm.
I thought he was going to at one point say that science is the only,
Hmm.
that word there is important,
Yeah.
only source of true knowledge about our universe.
Hmm.
If he would have said that,
Hmm.
then I would have said something. I would have asked him about how then do we ascertain meaning and purpose of our lives and in our lives.
Hmm.
And I think that would have been an opportunity for me to also talk about Jesus as well. But that never came up, never really presented itself.
But
So
had it, you would have. So,
yes,
but if you can just give us a minute or two on why would that have been a good place to go in a realm where we're talking about scientism? If he's more of a hard scientistic thinker, where science is the only game in town, the only methods you can know truth by are scientific truths. Why would a pivot to? But then, how can we derive meaning and understanding? Just connect the dot. Make sure you connect that bridge. It's
yes,
really important that
yeah,
that you do that. Why can't science do that?
yeah. Because well, science is not telling us the. First of all, science isn't giving us information.
Hmm.
Okay, science is the way in which we. It sort of provides the methodology that we
Right.
use to examine different parts of the universe.
Hmm.
But it is scientists, it's human beings that actually look at the data from the science
Hmm.
and then try to explain it.
Hmm.
That's why you can have an old Earth idea and a new Earth idea, or you can have different ideas of the fossil record and so on and so forth, because science tells us one thing,
Yeah.
but it's ultimately human beings that need to then derive that. So
Mm.
science cannot be the only source of information. And frankly, we all have, there's I'm trying to think of a way to say this again and remain anonymous.
Mhm.
We all have different we all espouse purpose and meaning in our lives
Mhm.
in different ways.
Sure.
And frankly, science is just not equipped to deal with the sort of metaphysical ideas
Mhm.
that would be inherent
And there are
to me as
other
a person.
fields open to us, like philosophy, theology,
Exactly.
certain experiences in our lives which do that. And
Yeah.
so science, as though it's a great endeavor,
Yeah.
it's limited by definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for sharing with us that the buffet of different things that you could have, should have, or would have done. Learning from this experience, friends. This is the whole point. When you reflect on a conversation, especially the wide-ranging ones, you're going to have quite the opportunity. There's going to be a lot of things you can sample from the 3-hour conversation or the 1-hour conversation, whatever it is, that you can look back and say, boy, I wish I would have done that differently. Now, it may be with that person again, but it may not be. It may be with someone completely different. And for me, I can share my own story is that when I was being witnessed to years and years ago by two guys who came to the door at my apartment complex at University of Michigan. Um, they never would have thought they made a difference, and I'm sure they've replayed the coulda, shouldas, and wouldas in their own lives, but they were making a dent. And 9 years later, I gave my life to the Lord. So, if you don't think that you are making a dent, or if you beat yourself up too much about the coulda, shouldas, and wouldas, just remember something: your burden is not to save someone. Your burden is to be faithful in the moment. And like those two guys, like Brandon's been with his friend, like I have and you have likely been with other people, God will use you despite the coulda, shouldas, and wouldas.